Double A hole.
Yeah. If you want to.
Just sit there, it's sitting there for 15 years now since I shot. But that it doesn't spoil.
No.
You know.
My stuff, all my metallic stuff, I bought over 10 years ago. I just started using that. But I just kept buying it. Yeah. Stainless, you know. They did the 350 or the 35.
That was
But
it.
the base price up right now is 16 something. And then you can't buy now 19. Yeah. Yeah.
I got a Henry 22 that I bought. I think I shot it. I filled up the magazine, however many shells, and I emptied it.
Yeah.
That's the only time I shot the damn thing.
No. You have your 410. Use it.
I got my 410 off of a gun broker.
Roger, you ready? 6, I guess. I'll let you get in here and then maybe. All right, we'll call the meeting to order. I just, do I have to read that?
I don't think so
Okay.
anymore.
All right, we do have one commissioner join in remotely, today, Commissioner Waldham. And, looks like, I just want to thank everybody for showing up here, and we will call the meeting to order and we'll rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I guess I skipped and did the welcome early. So again, welcome everybody to, tonight is our Truth in Taxation meeting. So it's gonna be very interesting for everybody to see kind of how we arrived at our budget and where our budget is, and so I'll turn it over.
Ryan's bringing up my PowerPoint. So welcome everyone again. So this meeting is about the county's budget and levy and how we arrived at it and what makes up the county's budget and levy. For specific property questions, of course, you'd want to go talk to the assessor's office because they can talk about your very specific property and why your taxes may have gone up or whatnot. And they're here down the hallway. If anyone wants to go down there after the meeting, they'll still be here, so you don't have to rush out of here. So I will just jump in. So Pine County's budget process started about a month earlier this year than it had previously. We started it back July 8th, and that is when we did our initial budget overview after all departments had submitted their budget requests. We reviewed auditor treasurer budgets and then outside entities that we work with, like the Historical Society and the Agricultural Society. August 5th, we had the different departments started presenting their budgets. August 12th, we had a special meeting and other departments presented their budget. September 2nd, we had additional discussion on the budget. And then September 16th, the board did adopt a preliminary levy, which is what the truth and taxation notices are based on. Just a couple weeks ago on November 18th, we had a follow-up budget meeting as part of the regular county board meeting. Just further discussion after departments were refining their budgets throughout the fall, and as additional information came in, we were refining budgets, and just to give the board an update as to where we were then. Tonight, we're here for the truth and taxation meeting, and so we'll dive into that more in just a moment. The final budget and levy will be adopted on December 16th. And so feedback tonight will obviously be taken into consideration for that adoption. So overall, our preliminary property tax levy was a 2.6% increase from 2025. We levy in several different funds for whatever their purpose is. So the general fund is really all those courthouse operations that you see on this main floor. Health and Human Services road and bridge, so that's our highway department. Our building fund, so we have a special fund that we stick some money in to hopefully be able to address capital needs, like a roof on this building and things, so that we've got some funds put away when those things have to be replaced. We have 3 debt funds, the jail, so downstairs of this building, the courthouse, these 2 levels, and then a capital improvement program bond from 2017 when we built that North Pine Government Center. And then we have a technology equipment fund as well that we levy in. And that is for technology needs. It seems like different programs have to be updated and things very frequently, unfortunately. And so that gives us dollars to be able to plan some of those larger projects. And then the election fund is a fund that is a fairly new fund. And we did that because previously, as you know, elections are every 2 years. So previously, we would have a year of a very low election levy and then a year of a very high election levy. And so we have just made it now so that we levy every single year for elections, but it's a smaller amount to prevent that kind of up and down. So that's just $25,000. The middle column there, you can see the dollar change to each of those different funds. The bond funds, the amounts, the levy dollars are the required amounts that are in the bond documents. So that's not something that we get to decide on. It's just already spelled out for us when we received those bonds. Expenditures, just a quick comparison in those different funds of 2025 versus 2026. You'll notice the general fund has a change of expenditures of just under $500,000. A significant portion of that is wages. Health and Human Services actually has a decrease in their expenditures of $213,000. Yet you may notice that they're getting a significant amount of levy dollars on the first slide, and that is due to some changes in our reimbursement structure and other changes that are coming down the pike from the state and federal levels. Highway Department had a $6.3 million increase in expenditures, and that might look a little shocking. However, that's all project-based, so we have a 5-year road plan. So some years are larger than others, and it's kind of a cyclical thing. So that is completely tied to construction projects. The opioid settlement, those are dollars that we received from the drug manufacturers, and we can spend those for addressing opioid concerns. And so our Chemical Health Coalition actually handles what those funds will be spent on. COVID-19 relief, 2026 is the last year we could spend any of that COVID funds. And so we will be spending the remainder of them in 2026. We've held on to them, trying to find places that they will help, but they have to be spent by 12/31 of 26. So we are spending the remainder, and that $677,000 is approximately how much of those funds we will have left. The land management fund, you'll notice that that wasn't on this first slide, and that is because there's no levy dollars that goes into that, and so that's why that was not on the first slide. So that is the management of our tax forfeited land. And that dollar amount looks very large. However, that is really accounting for the revenues and expenses for when we sell the land, tax forfeited land, we get revenue. But then those dollars are paid out to the township, cities, schools. So it's basically an in and out fund. Building fund, again, level, jail bond, those 3 bond. Again, that's all spelled out in the bond document, so that's not anything that we can choose to what those dollars will be for expenses. And then tech fund and election. So you'll notice that elections has a huge increase in expenditures over 2025, but that is just because it's an election year in 2026. So overall, in 2025, our total expenditures were about $53 million. In 2026, they'll be about $60 million, which is a $7.1 million increase, which looks very scary. However, just as a reminder, almost $6.3 million of that is tied to highway projects. This just gives you a little picture of where those dollars go when we break it down, where they're spent. So you'll notice for 2026, the largest portion of the pie is the highway fund. because we do have such a large construction season planned. So 30% of all those expenditures is in the highway fund for next year. Next is public safety, human services, general government. Again, that's kind of this main floor of the courthouse. Debt, public health. You can kind of see how it goes down of where those dollars go. Next, this pie graph narrows it down a little bit further of what are we spending those dollars on? Yes, you know that they're spent on highway or on public safety, but really what are we spending that on? So this slide shows you that 39% of all those expenditures are salaries. 18% is on that road and bridge construction, 14% is benefits, and kind of goes around there. So services and charges, of course, and then supplies, materials, debt, equipment, and furniture is a small portion. These expenditures that you see on the screen are 80% of our total expenditures. And they can be dropped into just those very few buckets. So salaries and benefits, overall countywide, that increased $566,000 in 2026. Road and bridge construction is the next largest expenditure. Our debt, our out-of-home placements, vehicle and equipment purchases, so that not only includes your squad cars, but if we need a new road grader or a dump truck or those types of things. Medical services to prisoners, so that we have to provide medical care downstairs to any inmates. Computer and repair agreements, again, a lot of our work is on specialized systems that have these software agreements and things, so that's what that total is from. And then the highway service agreements, that is when we have to hire outside engineering or we're hiring someone to stripe the road or those types of things. If you look at the 2026 revenue and expenditure by fund, you will notice that the ones that have a negative in the net column, the expenditures exceed the revenues. So it is an unbalanced budget situation currently. And this is what the proposed budget looks like. The general fund is sitting at $517,000 deficit. There is about $350,000 worth of reserves planned to be spent. So when you take that $350,000 off, it's about $160,000 deficit in the general fund. And that $350,000 planned spending of reserves is savings that we saved in 2025 by making some hard decisions in 2025. So we had some funds to carry over to 2026. Health and Human Services is currently sitting unbalanced by about $90,000. Becky, our Health and Human Services Director, has done a significant amount of work to make this budget look that good. And I think she's got some other tricks up her sleeve that once we get into 2026, hopefully we should come out of the year not having spent in a deficit. The highway fund is always balanced, which is great because we do such long range planning for that with funding. Opioid settlement, COVID-19 relief, land management, those things are all in building. They're all easily balanced because we only spend what we receive. Jail bonds, courthouse bonds, CIP bonds, again, those are things where the bond documents tell you how much you have to levy for them and they tell you how much you have to spend. You will notice that we have a surplus in those funds, and that is because the bond documents note that you have to have revenue equal to about 105% of the bond payment due to people not paying their property taxes, so that you have the funds to pay those bond payments. And so that is just a function of the bond document that we have to levy a little bit more than we're actually paying. Tech fund, again, we only spend what we get. And then elections, as I already mentioned, our revenue does exceed our expenditure, but that was planned because like in 2025, we've added to the elections fund balance. And so we will use fund balance in 2026 to make that work. Levy versus budget. So a lot of people use levy and budget as interchangeable, but they're not. So levy is just one revenue source that we pay for the expenses with. And levy is obviously your property taxes. So this slide just shows you the levy that goes to each of those function areas, what the expenditures are in those funds, and what percentage of them of the expenditures are paid by the levy. So you do see those bond funds and like the technology fund that is completely paid for by the levy dollars. But your main three top funds there, they have other revenue sources, so they are not fully paid by levy dollars, like state aids and reimbursements and things. And I guess I always like to note that paid levy percentage on the total. So for 2026, the levy is covering 39.9% of our expenditures. I just wanted to note the top 10 property tax non-property tax revenues of where we get funds and to pay for things that are not property taxes. And this only is a peek at the general fund. So we receive county program aid. So that is an appropriation from the state annually that we receive. Our PILT, so our payment in lieu of taxes from the state. Police contracts, so our cities in Pine County do not have police departments, so they contract with our sheriff's office for specific services, police services. So we have contracts with those cities. Probation aid, so that again, that's a state appropriation that the state gives us to run our probation department. Interest earnings, so interest rates have been really good, and we've been able to really capitalize on interest earnings, and so that is now a top 10 revenue. When I have interest earnings on there twice, so the $600,000 is correct. Skip the 450, that was last year's. ARPA transfer, so I mentioned earlier that we have to spend that COVID-19 relief funds by 12/31 of 2026. And so that ARPA transfer is those ARPA or COVID dollars. That was called the American Rescue Plan Act. So that's those COVID-19 dollars that are remaining that we are going to be spending in the general fund. So that fund that pays for this building, like our sheriff's department, those types of things. So we're using that to offset costs and really make it so that we don't have to levy those dollars or cut those expenses. We receive police aid from the state of Minnesota for our sheriff's office. Again, it's just a state appropriation. Our solid waste assessment. So if you look at your property taxes at the bottom, your truth and taxation notice won't have it, but your actual property tax statement will have it at the bottom. There's a special assessment called a solid waste assessment. Last year it was $10. Next year it would be $12. And that is so that you can utilize all of the Pine County solid waste facilities. So we've got a transfer station in Pine City, a transfer station in Willow River, a recycling center in Sandstone. And we've got 2 household hazardous waste facilities that you can utilize as well. And so that solid waste assessment helps pay to run those things. And then the E911 grant. So that's a grant that we receive that assists with supporting our dispatch. So overall, when we look at the general fund and we compare total expenditures from 2025 to 2026, again, they increased $488,000, which is about a 2% increase. Our total revenue is less than that, significantly less than that, about $517,000. And I know that use of reserves, ARPA, is $536,000 that's already included to buy down that deficit to get to that $517,000. And then we plan to use another $350,000 of reserves as well. So overall, the levy portion to pay for those expenditures is about 56.8%, just over $14 million. This breaks down the general fund expenses by major department. So this isn't all the departments. We have some little ones like victim services and things, but these are the major departments just so that you can see where are those dollars being spent. Very specifically by department, just to give you an idea what's included in the general fund. So we've got, our lower level of this building with the sheriff and the jail, the county attorney, probation, and then really all of these offices here on this main floor. And then others too, like veteran service, and our facilities our building maintenance folks too are included in the general fund. We just have some stats so that you can kind of see what some of these departments do. And so auditor treasurer, it's kind of a historical look and then a look at 2024, what all the offices do. So the auditor treasurer, we have numbers on how many invoices we paid, how many receipts we processed, and those receipts processed do not count property tax receipts. That's just other receipts of funds. Absentee or mail ballots counted, deeds processed. I don't have that number for 2024. We did a software update in February of 2024, and the numbers, because we weren't on the system for a complete year, I wasn't able to get a complete year of numbers. So we won't be able to report that for 2024, but we will in 2025. Overall, the office also, of course, does the collection for all of the property taxes. So there's 63 taxing jurisdictions. So whether they're townships or schools or cities or the Banning Sewer District, all of those different taxing jurisdictions, we collect on the property taxes, and then we have to distribute those out to those different jurisdictions. So almost $46 million we collected and then sent out to those taxing jurisdictions. In zoning, again, stats that I have noted: complaints, violations, septic permits issued, septic compliance inspections received, shoreline building permits, minor subdivision reviews, and variances and conditional use permits. Just kind of some stats and a historical look at the work that's been done in the office over the years. Assessor's office, so we've got a few stats out of from them. So properties, so the assessor's office has to look at each property once every 5 years, or if there's a permit pulled, they also need to go out there. So in 2024, the staff in the assessor's office reviewed just 7,740 properties. Every single property that sells for consideration in Pine County, the assessor's office also has to review so that they can adjust the values based on what's happening in the real estate market. So in 2024, that was 922. And then homestead applications, just over 1,000 of those came in. And so a significant portion of those are relative homesteads. So they're reoccurring homesteads that they have to apply annually on, but it's still a significant amount of work for that department. Recorder's office, documents recorded, there was 5,962 documents recorded. And then the death, birth, and marriage licenses numbers, unfortunately, due to that software conversion, we couldn't get a complete number. So I didn't want to throw incomplete numbers up there. Sheriff gun permits, just to see how many of those they issue. And so you can kind of see a historical look back to on what they've done in that area. The jail provided a significant amount of data here going back to 2020 of folks that they booked into the jail, the average population, average stay or in days, cost per inmate per day, and then some information on jail incidents, because those are things that really take a extra time in the jail to deal with for the staff. And then just a note on the jail is we have 131 beds in the jail downstairs, but our operational capacity is 85% of that, or 111 beds. Health and Human Services. So again, expenditures from 2025 to 2026 decreased about $213,000 or 1.6%. The total revenue does not cover all those expenses. So we currently have an $89,000 deficit, which will likely be filled with reserves or just spending cuts during 2026. And the levy portion of all Health and Human Services expenses is about 33.8% of the total expenses. So it's a smaller portion of those expenses that are paid actually by our Pine County property tax payers. Just some more stats out of the Health and Human Services. So child protection reports, they did provide a 2025 number through 11/19. So you can kind of see the trends with that. And then over in the green too, total of all social services intakes, kind of you can see where those trends are at and the numbers of those that staff is handling. Child welfare information. So referrals and mental health referrals and parent support outreach. You can see kind of those numbers. That's all different areas that our Health and Human Services works in. And then adult protection and mental health, again, another area that our Health and Human Services works in. So adult mental health intakes and adult protective services. And then we also have a public health department, and so they do a lot of great programs. So they run the WIC program. So monthly average is 604 WIC participants. Home visiting, they do that. They do about 68 home visits every month, and then car seat distribution and education 134. So that was year to date for 2025, what our public health department has done. In highway, we've already kind of talked about that, but the expenditure significantly increased for 2026, about just under $6.3 million, which looks like this huge 53% increase. However, as I've already stated, that's all due to projects and tied to projects and planned projects. In this slide, my total revenue should be that 18,042,816 because our revenue does equal our expenditures. Our local sales and use tax, so we do have that 0.5% of sales tax on all purchases in Pine County. And so that's generating just under $1.8 million worth of revenue for the highway department to be used on our local roads each year. So the levy portion is just $2.2 million, just over $2.2 million, which is a very small portion of those expenditures, about 12.2%. Because a significant amount of those projects and things are based on state aids. Overall, the county has 690 miles of roads. Of those 690 miles, 383 are paved and 307 are gravel. Just a closer look at our debt funds. As I've stated, we have the 3 debt funds. We have the jail bond, which we're getting down there. It will be paid off in 2031. It's currently sitting at about balance of $6.5 million. We have our 2017 capital improvement program bond, which was when we built the North Pine Government Center. That will be paid off in 2033. The balance on that's currently sitting about $2.3 million. And we have our courthouse bond, which has a balance of about $5.1 million, which will also be paid off in 2031. For the jail and the courthouse, you might be looking at those and going, well, the jail wasn't built in 2015 and the courthouse wasn't built in 2020. And those are the years that we refunded or refinanced those bonds to take advantage of lower interest rates. So that's why those dates don't line up for when we built these buildings. Fund balances. So just like everyone hopefully has a savings account for rainy days. So in our general fund, our total fund balance currently sits at $8.8 million as of 12/31 of 24. Of that fund balance, there's just almost $6.4 million that's unassigned, so meaning can be used for any general fund purpose. And so the remainder of those funds are dedicated funds for certain things. For example, they might be grant funds that can only be used for a specific purpose that the grant said they could be used for. So overall, our unassigned fund balance in the general fund is about $6.4 million, which is about 27% of our spending, our annual spending in the general fund. The county board has adopted a policy that we should have an unassigned fund balance of about 20 to 35%. And so kind of if we looked at that 35%, we would be needing about $8.1 million. So we haven't made it there yet, but we are at least within that range. The state auditor's office would like to see us between 35 and 50%. However, we've been clear that that's not something that we can obtain. We don't want to be a bank and be sitting on the taxpayer dollars either. So we just need to have the funds available in case some of those things happen, then we don't get the funds we need to so we can still pay our bills. In Health and Human Services, as of 12/31 of 24, they had just under $4.4 million of fund balance. Of that fund balance, there was a little bit, $140,000 that's restricted for a home visiting program, but otherwise the remainder of those dollars could be used for any legal health and human services expense. The highway fund, you'll notice, was about $2 million in the negative. And so that was something back in 2020 and 2021, prices significantly increased for our highway projects and things, and we just continued on with our road plans so that we didn't get behind on maintenance and things like that. However, our funding wasn't catching up to our plan. So now our funding has now caught up to our plan. And so we no longer have a deficit balance, but we did hold a deficit balance for a couple years because of those project costs increased so much, but we continued on the same plan. And land management has about a $2.4 million balance. And so that is from the tax forfeit land sales. And so those funds, there are some restricted funds in there that can only be used for things like blight cleanup, parks, and road, like forest roads, but otherwise those can be used for any legal purpose. So overall, just kind of a quick look at property taxes. So obviously the county budget does flow into property taxes. And so this hopefully starts to explain how that works. So property taxes, you look at your tax statement and you have a taxable property value on it. And so that taxable property value is taken times the class rate. And the class rate is described in state statute. So for example, residential properties pay a 1% class rate. Commercial properties pay a little bit of a mixed rate, but it's about 1.5 or 2%. And so the state statute describes what class rate for each type of property. And so you take that taxable market value times the class rate and you get your tax capacity. So that is the number that your property taxes are calculated on. So just to have the example of a homestead residential property that's valued at $200,000. Again, that class rate for homestead residential property is 1%. So you'd have a tax capacity of $2,000. That's not saying you pay $2,000 worth of taxes. However, that is the number that your taxes are actually calculated on. And then we need to get to the tax rate. And how we get to the tax rate is we add up every single parcel in Pine County's tax capacity. And so when we did that for 2026, it's currently sitting at 54,456,082. So that is every single property in Pine County's tax capacity added together. And then we take our tax levy of just $23.4 million, just under that, and we divide those two. And when we divide those two, we get the tax capacity rate or the tax rate. So in 2026, our proposed tax rate's 42.9%. So if, for example, you had a $250,000 home, your tax capacity would be $2,500, and you take that times the 42.93, and your county portion would be $1,073. But of course, your property taxes are also made up of your city or township and your school district. So that's just how and this same arithmetic works for those, just you'd be plugging in a different number for tax levy. And their tax capacity is different because school districts only cover a small portion, or it's only your township or city that the tax capacity is added up from. So this kind of gives you an idea of the different types of properties and how their values changed for 2026. So residential property, their values went up about 2% overall throughout the whole county for 2026 from 2025. Seasonal property did see a little bit more of a jump at 9%. So a lot of seasonal property is on lakes, but we do have a lot of seasonal property too that's out in the rural areas. Agricultural was very flat for 2026 compared to 2025. Rural vacant land, again, that's just kind of your hunting properties that don't have any improvements on them. That was pretty flat as well, about 1%. Commercial and industrial, you did see those jump up a little bit with 7% increase in value. And then apartments did see a significant increase with 14%. However, a large portion of that increase is the building across the street here came online in that apartments category. So that is why that jumped up so much, is we had a significant new construction project that came online. And then on the flip side, the tax capacity typically increases very similar to what the values increase. So you can kind of see what those things change down the line. So kind of the interesting thing about property taxes is, for example, if you have a residential property and your value went up more than 2%, our levy was still our levy, but yet now you are a bigger portion of the total. So you likely had some dollars that shifted to you if your value went up more than 2%. You know, the average person whose value went up 2%, your taxes likely stayed very similar, the same. But if they went up more than 2%, then you likely saw a bigger jump. Otherwise, that's all I have. As I already stated, our final budget and levy will be considered at the December 16th board meeting. And we'll kind of go from there.
Okay. Thank you for that. I had a question.
Sure.
So when we collect, like the tax statements go out, and they obviously have the city, school district, whatever on there, and we collect all the money.
Right.
Do we get like an administration?
No, we do
Okay.
not get administration fee for that. It's
Okay.
just a statutory responsibility of the county.
Just another cost essentially.
Right.
That was the only question I had. Should we do the board first? You guys got any questions? Nothing?
No, it's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, very, very well presentation. Online, you got anything, JJ?
No, I do not, Mr. Chair.
Okay, sounds good. So then from there, we'll open up the public comment. If you do want to come up to the podium, state your name, where you're from, and then, yeah. Are we doing a time limit? No? Okay. Usually we have a time limit. This is a different, so anybody that wants to speak, come on up. Just name and where you live. That's all we care.
Hi, I'm Karen Soderquist and I live on Cross Lake, just up the road. And our taxes went up 30.05% from 25 to 26. So it's a big concern because that's a lot of money and how to come up with that. And so we're just wondering, nothing's really changed. Yes, we did build a new house. We tore an old cabin down and built a new house. But we live on a dirt road that is not maintained by the city or the Pokegama Township. So all the neighbors take care of it themselves. And we have we built a small house compared to like a lot of big houses. And so we're just concerned that the taxes are gonna kill us. And, you know, like what is gonna happen with that? That's,
Most of the questions you have, did you guys go down to the
yeah,
assessor's office?
Yeah, we
Okay,
did.
okay, yeah,
Our husband, David.
okay, yeah, yeah. So that would be, I mean, this is,
okay.
essentially, this is just a conversation about the budget.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You know, if there's a concern about valuation and stuff like that,
I got
then
that.
that is a different meeting.
Okay.
June.
So,
June.
But definitely, we still can listen to what you got to say. I
Sure.
mean, that's
so
fine.
basically that's what I wanted to say is
Yeah.
it's scary, 30%. And
Yeah, because they raised it 30% and we didn't do anything different. In fact, there was things that were, we knocked down a barn shed
yeah,
that used to be taxed, and then the blacktop driveway had to be all tore out. That's no longer there because of the sewer hookup. And then the dirt road is a private road that we live on.
so all the neighbors. take
So
care.
we
Yeah.
maintain that.
And I'm assuming most of your increase is valuation, the valuation went up.
That's what I understand.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's, unfortunately, that's driven by sales.
Right.
Comparables. I mean, they don't do an official appraisal. It's a mass appraisal. So they gotta take the sales in the area and that does drive them up, drive them down.
I got that,
Um,
yeah,
You know, so it is a little bit of that, but yeah.
sure, right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's basically.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, folks. I know Kelly had mentioned that, I believe the offices are open this evening, right, Kelly, for any questions or anything?
Yes.
And they had been there.
Yep.
Okay, well, just a reminder, I believe, is it policy, Kelly, that when you do remove a building or anything of structure, like they mentioned, their blacktop, that you have to actually fill out some sort of form and paperwork so that gets taken off, so it does not continue to be counted as value?
Okay, that's.
No form or anything have to be filled out, just we need to be notified, others we'd have no way to know, but that can be done through a simple phone call.
Okay,
Okay, so Sarah and David, did you guys notify the county that you reduced your value by removing a building and blacktop?
Well,
Just
when-
now I
when-
did.
When the lady came out to do her walkthrough around the property, then I mentioned it to her then as well, that was no longer there.
But you did build a new house,
Yes.
Yes,
and I would guess that's where the value is
Right.
compared to the other structure.
But yeah, we do need to let them know that.
Yep.
And I just did
Yeah.
that when I was
Yeah.
talking to her, so.
Yeah,
Great.
other, they are around once every 5 years, but yet then if you knocked it down now and they're not back till 5 years, it's good to give a call and just let them know. But it sounds like they were just out there, especially if you built a house.
but isn't 30% in just 1 year without doing anything an awful lot of money? 30 more percent?
But you did build a new house.
Right.
That's right,
Yeah, and
but
that's what I'm saying.
we've been
That's
living in that new house.
the value is in the new house. So you did something, you built a new house.
Right.
Yeah,
And that's where the value is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the valuation, I'm sure, changed substantially.
Yeah.
And that's what that is, because the old house probably was valued way less.
Right,
The new
right.
house is valued way higher.
So we'll talk to her again.
Yeah.
And
Lady that came
yeah,
out
they're
and-
great at explaining it down there.
And
And
hopefully-
they'll meet with you and
Sure.
try to answer any questions you got. So,
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. All
right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
anybody else? Come on up.
Glenn Slottick, 73261 Markville Road, Sandstone, Minnesota, Arnett Township. Some things, no time limit. I
Oh.
still stay under.
See, I gotta go home.
That was a bad mistake, gosh.
No, I would never abuse.
Time to work.
No, tax forfeit process, I'd like to have that explained how that's a 3-year, you go without paying for 3 years. This is a question answer too, right? See, now you answer it too.
Yeah, I can do that.
That's even, so that's a better deal. So anyway, that tax and how that goes, maybe is it 3 years? You don't pay taxes and you lose it on day one?
No, not necessarily. So, it's a total of 4 years basically, because like if you don't pay your 2025 taxes, they're not delinquent till January.
Mhm.
So then it's 3 years after that.
Yep.
So it's really 4 years. And then yes, we start the forfeiture process in that next January, which includes a certified letter, includes a sheriff's visit, includes a publication. And then folks have up 60 days to come up with like a payment plan, because we do have payment plans available. And there's options where we work with them. However, yes, then if after the 60 days, the taxes are not taken care of or on a payment plan, then the property does forfeit. And then the folks still have up until the time we sell it to also come in and repurchase it.
Okay, so it's a 4 years, 60 days, so to speak, and then
And
the
then-
sale.
Right, and
process.
we have to sell it with the new forfeiture laws, we have to sell it within 6 months of its forfeiture. And
Okay,
so typically we're forfeiting properties in May and we're selling them in September, so they've got about 4 months there to come
okay.
in and repurchase.
So that's when the general public is informed of and the general public is informed 100%, or I'm assuming it's online now. You'd have to
Right.
dig for it and find it, probably.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's right on our main page when we've got
Yep,
an auction going on.
So, and that's a May thing. You look at that in May and for the September sale.
Nope, the September sale doesn't get put out till August.
Okay, August for
Yes.
September sale.
Yes.
Okay.
And then under the new tax forfeiture laws, because that changed significantly in the last few years after the Tyler versus Hennepin County Supreme Court case.
Which we would agree with.
Yes, so now if we do actually sell the property, we only retain our property taxes that were due and our costs.
Yep.
And then the people who got their property forfeited have
Uh,
6 months to claim the proceeds from the sale.
Okay, but it is up to them to
right? They have to let us know because most of these people, honestly, we can't find. We have spent hours looking for them and we can't find them.
So, and then after 60 days, that becomes coffers.
Months.
6 months, and that becomes coffers or counties.
Well, it becomes tax forfeit dollars, which are split 40% county, 40% school district, and then 20% of the township or city that the
Okay,
property
to
was
would have
located
had
in.
it anyway. Okay, yeah, okay, thank you on that. Then the other is the reserves that are left. We're using some reserves that are left to pay down. Is that the unassigned fund balance? That's what we're calling reserves? So you know how much reserves we have
Yes,
and they're going away.
starting to.
Yeah, okay, so a lot of it, it's not looking good here in a year or two.
No.
We don't shut down.
It's looking way better than it did 15 years ago.
Okay, relatively speaking, it's
Yeah,
looking good, but it's not maybe looking black,
We had,
right?
we
Or
had about $1 million
say that.
in reserves and now we got 9 million.
yeah, and however that 9 million
Yeah.
equates to what that. Real numbers are, to me, it's looking like it's gonna be tough and tough. The state dictates, man, the Health and Human Services people, they gotta. I don't see Nathan Nelson in here, but he could maybe help us out a little bit down there in the state. I think he's making that life a little rough in that department there, to tell you the honest truth. And it's up to us to keep his toes to the fire, even though I maybe agree with him politically type thing, but I don't like when they shut down their government for 2 weeks or two paychecks and take their paychecks anyway. What happens here? What is Pine County don't pay its bills? Pine County shuts down? Who
Right.
gets paid? Do you get paid?
We.
Our elected
always pay
officials
our
would
bill.
get paid.
What's that?
The elected officials would get paid because we have to pay them by statute.
Okay, so the same goes for our state friends. But whatever. Are all township tax capacities the same rate? No,
No.
each individual each township has its own tax capacity. I'm gonna have to get that from you as
Yeah, I
far.
gave
I'll
it to you
rank
once, but I can give it to you.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, so that,
yep, because I gave that to you previously,
Yes.
showing like the
yes,
population.
okay, so that
and
is on there.
The tax capacity, yeah. Yeah, because each township, we look at what their tax capacity is of their properties and how much their levy is.
Yeah, so, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else in the public want to speak? We got anybody online? Okay. Well, thanks everybody for coming. Hopefully we got some answers today. You guys can see, yeah, the process is pretty interesting. We've been working on a long time, so, appreciate seeing people show up. I like seeing the public, so, with that, let's declare the meeting adjourned.